Hey, good morning, Mike. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara. It's 7:02, so therefore it is Talking Niagara.
Yes, indeedy. Yes, indeedy.
I said every morning, every weekday morning at 7:02, or whenever Dave graces us with his presence.
I told you before I get start, before I get here, I always get distracted near the start of the show
Yeah,
with something. I was reading about Cuba just before. Oh, shoot, it's past 7.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So here's an interesting thing. Okay, got anything non-show to bring on the show?
Um, Non-show to bring on the show. Well, I was with Paul yesterday, and there was one interesting thing there that Paul brought up. One of the parts of the city hall agenda that we were covering was a letter by a, sort of the Jewish community, or somebody a spokesperson for the Jewish community Canada wide.
Mm-hmm.
It said that it wanted to make May Jewish Heritage Month, but it included the anti-Semitism stuff that it did last year. Last year, it came up with a letter that was just too political, basically, and they had to change the letter. And then after that letter was changed, but they included the business about rising anti-Semitism and stuff as part of it. I think they should remove that. I think they should just ask for Jewish Heritage Month, but they wanted to be political with it, and I'm afraid I don't like that.
Yeah.
Particularly when I don't necessarily. I for one, I'm a person that doesn't see a whole lot of rising anti-Semitism everywhere. I see criticisms of Zionism, and when somebody criticizes Zionism, they are somebody shouts they're an anti-Semite. Somebody criticizes the violent settler movement in the West Bank, someone says, "Here, we must be an anti-Semite." If somebody doesn't like the war launched in Lebanon, you're an anti-Semite. So there's no way of getting around being an anti-Semite. So I think they should leave that out and just ask for Jewish Heritage Month, which I'm fully, I think we should all be fully endorsing, because, of course, the Jewish community has enhanced our community huge over the last couple hundred years. And what's this from Betty Zoom?
Somebody hit a ship gate yesterday.
A what?
A ship gate was hit yesterday as well. Ship hit the gate system. Gate yesterday.
Oh, are you talking about down around Port Colborne area when the ship hit the bridge?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that happened. Yeah,
we didn't.
That happened. It's going to be that bridge will probably be closed for a while.
Yeah. Normally happens. They normally pull the bridge in an up position and then close it for a while until they can effect fixes, which in Port Colborne means going around the other way. Anyway, okay. All right. So moving on to the stories we've got today, Shaman Zavitz is to be awarded the Sovereign's Medal for Volunteers, which is a national award. He's going to Rideau Hall Thursday to collect this award, and it's presented by the Governor General of Canada to recognize exceptional achievement in a wide range of fields. And for people who've done obviously years of volunteer work, something that hey, Dave would probably want to put his hat in for that one at some point, wouldn't you?
You know what? I think Pat Sirianni is probably up there for it, and there's he did a lot of articles on the history of Niagara Falls, so I would think that Pat Sirianni might want to do something of that kind. He had a keen interest in that. Also, a fellow by the name of Jim Brown, who I know, who is an excellent historian, amateur historian. He knows what goes on up and down the river historically and geographically. I pale in comparison to any of those guys. And
but this is a model. This is a medal for volunteering, and not just with the sort of work that you do for for Kiwanis and I'm not taking away from work that anybody does for any of these volunteer organizations, like and they all do their bit for the community, don't they?
yes, well, I would say that I again would pale in comparison to some of the volunteer work that people have done in this town. There are people in my club that have volunteered for well over 50 years. They devote a great amounts of their time and money and effort to improving the community, and nobody knows who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there are a lot of those people out there that don't know who they are. Now, Sherman here, he's devoted a great deal of time and effort to keeping alive the history of the region and Niagara Falls in particular. And he's an excellent historian, and it's motivated by love for him. You can't do that without a whole lot of love. Now, Betty has come back to us as some guy watches the ships caught all of it wild. It must be a video. Must be a video out there. So sorry about moving back and forth with stories here tonight, but we're being filled with some observations from Betty Zoom. And here Mike Cushman has come on and said, Sarah Ward does a ton of stuff. Dave Wheeler is awesome and modest. I'm not being modest here, I'm being realistic. There are people out there that do vast amounts of work and have done for many, many, many years, like their whole lives kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when you look at all the stuff, the community, and for every volunteer you see being recognized, there's probably 100 other ones that should be.
Well, okay, Sherman Zavitz retired from his official role as the Niagara Falls historian in 2019, but he's been involved in many things since. Battle of Chippewa commemoration services hosted by Niagara Parks Commission. He was delivered a talk on that last year. Historical Society leadership. He continues to serve and is executive member of Lundy's Lane Historical Society and a number of other things. So he's still active in the community, even though he retired as the official historian.
Yes. Yes. Well, he just can't do the walking tours and stuff like that he used to do. I don't know. I've been on a couple of walking tours for Sherman Zavitz. He went around the cemetery one time, spoke about a whole bunch of different things that you wouldn't notice or think about if you'd see a cemetery stone and you think, oh, that's kind of curious. And he'd be able to tell you why it is there. And he also he's done walking tours anyway. I've been on a couple of them, and he can't do that anymore because of his age. He's just he's just older. He still has the same interest and the same passion. He just doesn't have the body to go along with it any longer, and that's why he retired, because he can no longer put the time and effort in that he was. Everyone will remember Sherman Zavitz's articles in the Niagara Falls Review. He did that for a long time. Yeah. And I that was the first place I would go to. When I got a paper, I go right back to where Sherman would write the article once a week or wherever, right? I look back and look for Sherman's article and read that one first and then go on to the rest of the paper.
Yeah.
That's how interesting they were.
He used to write that, and that was called a Niagara Note series, wasn't it? In the
yes, yeah, it could be. And I've got one or two of his little books here. too. He would write little books and just pick up a little story or two. He picked up the story of a American drummer boy who I think he got captured up here.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And another good story he wrote was an American back in the day. A lot of wives would follow their husbands in the army. They would just follow them and be with their husbands while they were on these campaigns. And one mentions one of her husbands at the Battle of Lundy's Lane, the battle where he's dying and he's suffering terribly. And there's a doctor, a British doctor. He happened to be, back in those days, they were a little bit more compassionate. They would deal with both sides wounded. So and what she was saying, what she was saying to the British doctor, and she says, why is this happening? Why don't those people who start this war fight the war and leave us out of it, kind of thing? She just, and of course that's been echoed through the ages. Hey, you up there with all the power, you old men up there, why don't you go out in the field and battle it out? Leave our young people alone.
Yeah. And in fact, that's certainly been heard in the current crisis. All right.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And I shiver to think if the dumbass in charge, the dumbass and the chief dumbass down south of us there, Dr. Donald J. for Jesus Trump, if he escalates, a lot of people are going to die. And I hope somebody comes around and tells them that, look, it's got to be a better way.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And talking about that, Cuba is confirming talks with U.S. officials to try and end Trump's energy blockade of the country.
Yes. So Cuba is, of course, complaining that, yes, they have the right to get oil from anyone. And yes, that is an imposition of international norms and the rules. But when does a hegemon ever listen to any of that? They do what they want to do. China does what it wants to do in the Uyghur territories. It's pulled off illegal tariffs on our stuff because they're big and mighty. And U.S. has done the same to us, and it protects its own interests, and it will do what it wants to do with Cuba. It's the big guy on the block, and there's nobody going to do anything about it. So Cuba could complain that it's all illegal and all that, but Trump's going to continue. Trump's just doing the wrong thing, in my view, is he has the power of the oil. He has the power of oil over them. And all he has to do is feed it to them under conditions. And those conditions, he can, first of all, give them as much oil as they need to survive. Maybe not much more, but enough to survive so people don't have to suffer so much. And get food in there and everything else. And quit the suffering of the Cuban people and then start negotiating. He doesn't have to do it this way. He's hurting a lot of different people right down. And of course, the poorest and most humble of them all are the one that's going to be hurting the most. Yeah. And that's the way you do it, with a bit of compassion. Just tell them, look, we can't handle it the way you are. We can't handle the fact that you may be an adversary of ours. We need control of you, like we have control of Canada and Mexico. Very much. You got to be a little bit more compliant, and we'll bring you into free trade and all that. Unfortunately, Obama had a scheme going there where they were drawing them in with trade and all this other stuff, trying to make their life a little bit better, making them a little bit more dependent on capitalist networks. And that was doing its job. And then suddenly Trump comes along and he messes it up, like the Iran deal.
Generally speaking, there's always some criticism, but generally speaking, Obama was moving that in the right direction. Rehabilitating Cuba, I think might be the right word. been done differently, obviously, but Obama was making positive steps in that regard.
With both Iran and Cuba, they were getting into the point where they would be latched in to the world markets. They would be latched in to the community of nations where they couldn't help but being a better player, a more positive player.
Yeah.
Because they would depend on world markets and all the others. And once that happens, there's no way. Like if you look at something like Vietnam or China, or look what happened in Vietnam and China. What did they do, right? They converted their whole system to a kind of a capitalist communist system so that it would integrate with the world. And you got a place like Vietnam who will integrate with the U.S. on trade and stuff, and they were arch enemies of the U.S., of course, because the U.S. did a lot of mighty damage to their country in a failed war, and yet they're integrated economically with the United States in the West now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so and that's because after the war, the U.S. went back to them and started to make positive relations without a gun, but rather with the dollar.
And the other thing, of course, is that as soon as Fidel Castro got older, Cuba was ripe for change.
Yeah, Raul took over after Castro, and he was his brother, and he was a very powerful person. He was no nonsense. If a communist official wasn't doing what he was supposed to do or corrupt, you better watch out, Raul, if Raul found out about it. If you were a corrupt communist official.
Yeah, but again, there was movement in the direction of reconciliation with the West.
Yes, and it was a reluctant one because as far as the Cubans were concerned, the United States was making them suffer with embargoes.
Yeah,
just because they had a different political system. But this one of the big factors always was with the states that they had a lot of companies and businesses in Cuba that were taken over, nationalized by the Cubans, and they've always wanted those back. I think Coca-Cola Company wanted their, really bummed out, but there was others, and right down to Meyer Lansky and the mafia in the casinos down there. They were probably bummed out huge too.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, this is time for this to conclude, and you can do this with kindness. You can be firm. You could just say, look, we just absolutely cannot have you being a potential enemy to us right on our doorstep. So what can we do? What kind of deal can we make that you and us are going to be in good shape? In the meantime, we can hold the power of oil over you. And Rubio's family was from Cuba. And Rubio,
but he is American born though, isn't he?
He's American born, but the family came from Cuba before the Cuban Revolution to Miami. So a lot of people say it ran away from the Cuban Revolution. No, it didn't. Rubio sometimes play that game, but they did go back to Cuba after the revolution to see what it was like, and then turned around and came back to Miami. His brother-in-law, as reported earlier on this show in a different episode, was the number 2 cocaine kingpin in his brother-in-law and his sister, although his sister could never be implicated in it, was the number 2 kingpin, cocaine kingpin. That once Rubio got into politics, his brother-in-law's sentence got reduced, and he got out. And then Rubio got him a job in real estate, which is the $58 million or something that he was supposed to have salted away was never found. And real estate's a great way of laundering money. So you got to wonder sometimes who is running the country.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that Mexico was supposed to be supplying oil to Cuba.
Mexico would some. Venezuela supplied the bulk of it. Mexico snuck
No,
one
I
more.
mean, since Mexico was vowing to break the blockade.
Yeah, they got one tanker load in, I think, and then after that they couldn't get they didn't. They gotta deal with Trump on their own too. Don't forget, we got trade deals coming up, and you know how vindictive
I know. Yeah,
and sort of inconsistent Trump is. But Trump is here. Somebody's got to just take the power away from him on this one. It has been said that the all the generals and military people are trying to pump out of the situation room in all the military operations now, particularly when they rescued those two people in airmen in Iran. That Trump really gets in there and interferes a lot. So they try to make their plans without him. They got two meetings, one with him and one with the real people making the decisions, because he's so inconsistent and all over the map. So and that might be the case with Cuba too. Remember, he's a irritated guy. Like if you say one wrong word, he'll give you a 10% more tariffs and all this. But he's in a situation now where he could really, really look like a good guy by coming down positively with Cuba.
Yeah.
Like Obama. Obama looked good when he did that. And Trump comes down with a sledgehammer.
I think the point being is that Obama was trying to, he knew that rehabilitating Cuba into the West was not something that was going to happen in 3 weeks. It was a process that needed to take over, several years and perhaps even over a couple of decades. But he was prepared to work on that.
Yes, he was. And to normalize relations and then get things going. Like for one thing, the American farmers already had, despite the embargo, the blockade that the U.S. had on Cuba, the farmers were able to make deals through their own government, through the U.S. government, to have trade with Cuba. It was a good little cash cow for American farmers, and sort of Obama was trying to build on that kind of thing, include trade back and forth. And once you got that trade network going back and forth, then you become dependent on the United States, or in this particular case, and trade network can go back and forth between once the blockade is opened up and prosperity comes into the country. Your communist system's not going to last too long. You know what I mean? It's going to crumble, and because people are looking for prosperity, and they see prosperity on the way. Now, the positive things of Cuba's communist policies was the country became very, very well educated in a very short period of time. You take a very poor island like Cuba that had certain highlights with casinos and resorts and stuff like that, but the vast majority of the island was very poor.
Well, that was one of the things that Castro was very keen on, was actually improving education across the land.
And they did. They had a whole lot of doctors and educated people. They did very, very well. People from Cuba were very well educated compared to the United States, the poor people in the United States, who remained pretty much ignorant even to this day. I mean, the average, I think in the United States, the education level is disastrous. Like there's a segment, I think 52 million people in the United States have less than a grade 8 education or something.
The other thing is literacy levels in Cuba are amongst the highest in the world, and have been since the 70s.
Yes, and that's because they were the highest before that. Now they're the lowest. So the medical education and all that was extremely well done.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is keep that aspect of the Cuban sort of society going, and then add in more capitalism, controlled capitalism, meaning to improve the country all in all. They did fairly well with their sort of tourism and the resorts they had. However, they can't maintain that now because they can't get anything into the country. So I would say to Trump, try to be quit stomping on Cuba. Just be firm and offer them some kind of compensation for seeing things your way. It'll work better, believe me.
Yeah.
You'll catch more Cubans with honey than you will with a stick.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think that's absolutely one more comment. Dumb the government likes. Okay. Not sure what that means. All right. Now moving on. A new poll by Angus Reid Institute suggests that a growing number of conservative voters nationwide would like to see Pierre Poilievre removed as the leader of the Conservative Party. And although that said, he still has incredible backing within the Conservative Party itself, within the federal Conservatives. And there's a couple of things that I was looking at here. So Poilievre, of course, got 87.4% support in January on the leadership review, and despite losing that election last year, and is really got a strong mandate, one of the strongest of any leader since Harper. Right, in fact, the strongest since Harper, and his campaign team includes top advisor Jenny Byrne, and is focused on rebuilding momentum after that loss.
Yeah. Anyway, this isn't really that good of news for Poilievre. He is energetically trying to change his image. The image has not been very well, although he is very well appreciated for the way in which he has enlarged the party and gained more party members. Like, he did actually get 300,000 more conservatives to sign up. That's quite an accomplishment. And despite losing his own seat and losing the election, his party did gain in seats.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's another accomplishment.
Yeah.
I mean, he ran into a superstar, Carney, basically. Carney comes in, he's a complete outsider. What other outsiders won big? Well, Trump was an outsider. He won big. Carney is an outsider. Carney's got more brains in the tip of his finger than the other outsider I just mentioned, but he's got so he comes in across as a superstar. And what does Carney have to offer? He offers centrist policies. As I said before, Carney he is so down the middle. He could be a conservative or a liberal.
Yeah, he could have easily, to be quite honest, the way he came in, he could have easily run, he basically rebuilt the Liberal Party as it was. But again, as you quite rightly said, he could have easily run a more centrist type Conservative Party and won handsomely with them as well. Obviously, it would be a different Conservative leadership than Poilievre's leadership, but still. He was probably, it's a different type of situation. He's got a different style of leadership.
He is centrist, right down the middle almost. That's what I mean. He is a practical person, pragmatic. He doesn't get off on the fluffy sort of idealistic stuff that
Yeah.
both parties were going towards. The liberals and the conservatives were moving farther right, the liberals were moving farther left, and it didn't, and they were going beyond. They're into a territory that was not practical. It didn't. Right now, people want people to come into government and run government in a accountant-like manner. Kind of, politicians are seen, not heard. Kind of just do your job. You do the practical things of government in Canada. Do not get all fluffy about some idealistic stuff. Are the bills paid? Who are we trading with? We got oil. Can we get it to market? We got uranium. Can we get it to market? What about this trade net problem we're having with the States? How can we get around it? How can we fix it? How can we modify it? These are the practical matters that we want done. Are the lights on? Is food coming into the country? What about our poor people? How do we, these kind of things, the practical things, the meat and potatoes of government. We want that done first and foremost. And then we can think of more of the idealistic realms of government. And that's where I think Carney's come in. That's why he's come in and become so popular, is because he names that out. And he talks to Canadians kind of man to man or man to woman kind of thing.
So immediately, if we look at the Conservative Party leadership outside of Poilievre, who would be the people that might well take over the party leader as party leader? And I have to ask that because the thing is that people like Melissa Lantsman, who's the MP for Thornhill, Ontario, she's a member of Parliament, and also another person is Tim Uppal, who's another deputy leader.
I think it might be a little bit early for Melissa because even though she's been noticed, I think it might be a little bit early for her right now to gain that position. I don't think the Canadian public knows her well enough, and she's got to get out there.
That's probably true because I had to go look her up.
Well, I've noticed her in speaking and some of the things she's spoken of.
Oh, I've seen her. I've seen her, but I can't remember her name. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So she needs a little bit of.
I know who she is. I've seen because she's accompanied Poilievre on a few things. But I've also never actually known, I can't remember her name, and that's a problem.
Well, once I heard her talk, I could remember who she was, because I was pretty impressed one time when she was talking, and since then, I've although she plays the party line, I kind of sense a kind of an intelligence, a political intelligence there. And I think probably what they should do is, if they need to groom another leader or a deputy, that might be the way to go, is get Melissa. But then again, I don't know all the rest of the talent in the Conservative Party. That's the only one I noticed. There are other talented people in the Conservative Party. What you need to, and what the Conservatives used to bring to the table, was that exact thing I was talking about. Let's get down to business and fix things up. Now, my biggest problem with Poilievre is not the way his style. I see that he's changing it. Then he's changing his image, and he's becoming more centrist as well, more practical monk. But my biggest issue with him is he's a Zionist, and he is for Israel. He never says anything about Palestinians or anything like that, although he was nominally against the war in Gaza, but he is for Israel without question, and that bothers me a whole lot. And so is Harper. It was like Israel, and he had no compassion for the rest of the people in the Middle East, which I think is a real problem among conservatives.
And just so because I mentioned his name, Tim Uppal is a member of Parliament for Edmonton Gateway, and he's a gentleman of Punjabi descent, so he wears a turban and a very long beard. So it's interesting that we've got leadership from the Punjab again potentially here, but he's strong leader.
If you know the politicians who are Sikhs like him, or Muslims, or even Hindus, they tend to be on average more conservative. They are for the kind they identify a lot more with the conservatives, the family values, that kind of thing that the conservatives normally do. They tend to be a little bit like conservatives. Traditional conservatives tend to be more religiously focused. So are they. The conservative religious values of the conservative values of Islam and Sikhism and Hinduism and Jainism and all, well, maybe not Jainism, or Buddhism, but those two excluded, would be very appealing to conservative values and conservative politics.
The other thing to note about Uppal is he's a banker and former radio host.
Well, banker, there you go. That's where your experience comes in.
Yeah.
Remember, here, like, if you know it, like, one thing I'm kind of sad of never doing is taking a sort of an introductory economics course of some kind.
Yeah,
economy is what drives everything. Geopolitics is all about economy and wealth and power. Much less secondary is peace and love and sharing. And it's pretty hard to combine the two. So now, it says here, Mike Cushman, Poilievre, he has lost a minority government due to poor leadership. He should resign. He blew it. Well, it's in discussion, and that's what this article is about. Even though he got pretty good support in among the conservatives, I think 88% of them voted for him to be leader, continue to be leader. But that trust is being eroded. 30% of the party now think he should be changed. It says here, right, Dave, then he ran away when Carney was in.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Rick, and I'm sorry, Betty. I cannot produce your things because I'm not going to be repeating profanity here.
Can you eliminate the profanity and just say it without saying the okay? Carney is corrupt. Is bankrupt Canada, and Trump will buy it in a foreclosure or China. Yeah, well, it hasn't been the first time that Canada was nearly bought by the U.S. Back in the 1880s, that happened too, when there was huge tariff pressure from the U.S. But we found a way around it back then, and it looks like we're finding a way around it right now. Yeah. My biggest issue with Carney, of course, is the $72 billion deficit that he's dumped on us. But at the same time, we're in extraordinary circumstances with our number one trading partner and friend turning on us like they have.
Yeah.
So when things become normalized, you can see that by the symbolic vote that the Senate and the Congress had in support of the USMCA, or as we call it, CUSMA, the NAFTA deal, basically, that ties us all together in a trading network.
Yeah.
Trump will not have support, even among his Republicans in the Senate and in the Congress.
Well, many of them rely upon
USMCA.
Yeah, and many of them have come from communities that rely upon heavy trade across those boundaries, right?
Yes, I think so. I think you're quite right. And we saw by Howard Lutnick's recent comments on Canada. I mean, he thought Chrystia Freeland was still the trade ambassador. She hasn't been involved in over a year.
Yeah.
And he thinks
In
she's
fact,
still
she's moved on to this, and she's moved on to this new role at least 6 months ago with Ukraine, and now her seat, she's got a replacement MP in her constituency. Clearly out of touch, right?
Well, yeah. Ignorance seems to be the driving factor of the Trump regime. He's ignorant. His people are ignorant. Ignorance all over the place. And it's bothersome when you got the most powerful country in the world and the people who are running it are so damned ignorant. It's troubling. I found that troubling when Trudeau was our leader and he seemed to be so ignorant. I found that a problem. But Trump is a whole different cake.
Category. Well, the problem was with Trudeau is when he became he changed, and all he wanted was green policies. Oh, that's not green, we're not having it. And the trouble was that and yet the need for green policies, but the problem here lies is you've still got to run the country.
And stuff that really didn't make any difference. Like, for instance, you want to make a big show of the guns, bringing in guns, right? Buying back guns and all that other stuff when we had a big problem on the East Coast. But never once did he say until the conservatives reminded him that most of the guns come from the States. Most of the illegal guns come from the States, and the real power should be on customs to stop them from coming in. But he wanted to buy back guns that weren't hurting anybody sitting in somebody's gun locker. So completely out of phase.
Exactly, and those completely off the charts with reality at a certain point, right?
Yeah, you may have issues with the guns in the guy's gun locker, but the number one issue, which should get like 95% of your attention, was the guns coming across the border.
I've never had any issue with anybody who's a gun owner and who is a gun club or a farmer or something like that. Those people have never really been a problem.
Oh, farmers have to have a firearm.
Yeah.
Really. I was up north where I had my cottage. There was a young lad there at the time I met him. He was 14 years old. I went to their farm to get some. I think we got some lamb from them. They raise lamb and cattle, so you could get some beef and you can get some lamb there. I think we got some lamb, and in a fair quantity. And they had trouble at the time with coyotes, and the young lad was able to pick them off at quite a distance with his rifle.
Yeah,
they had a couple of good dogs too that kept the coyotes away. But farther north, where her mother or her father lived, they had more trouble with timber wolves. So, but look, you can you think, of course, a farmer's going to need a firearm if he's got coyote problems.
Yeah, and exactly, Miladin.
The lion's share of the effort should be going after gang leaders and guns, and legal gun owners. Leave them alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that Trudeau never got, did he?
He was he made a big deal about buying back guns when 95% of the problem was the border, illegal guns coming in from the border.
Yeah.
Right. Including that massacre out east in Nova Scotia where the guy killed 20 people or more, disguised in a police car. I think more than half the guns he had on him were illegal guns that came from the States.
Yeah. All right. Okay, one more comment. Do you think Carney cares for the people? 1 billion as a businessman or running a country for
$299,000. Well, yeah, there's a comparison. You could talk about any political leader like that, particularly those who have business concerns. You could talk about Bush. He was a very wealthy man. Both the Bushes were extremely wealthy. Clinton became wealthy, so that's a question. Trump is a wealthy man. He doesn't take his salary or anything like that. You think that it's very clear that it's very suspicious how Trump runs his government and what kind of money is being made for his friends. And of course, the suspicion here is, of course, Carney's doing the same thing, is sort of manipulating politics to make him and his friends more wealthy. We got the same thing of Doug Ford, didn't we? We got the same accusations when Doug Ford got in, particularly with the Green Belt, that he's making his friends more happy and wealthier. Well, I think some of that has to go on. If you're going to get some support, you got to back your friends a bit. But I'm not so sure that it is as bad as all that. There's a huge amounts of accusations against Carney, which I don't see played out in any kind of investigative report, like not real one, stuff layered on by the newspaper to get more hits, but with no real substance to it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So now Carney's already a wealthy man. I think his net worth is about $7 million or something like that at this particular time. So he's very, very comfortable. And he's come from a middle class Canadian family. He was born in the Northwest Territories and grew up pretty much ordinary life in Edmonton. He did have talent, so he became an economist and a banker. So he's pretty much made money and he's comfortable. He's going to have as many TVs or cars or even a yacht if he wanted it. But when you have those accomplishments already, you find you may have talent to run the government and run it more like a business. I mean, a real business,
All right. Okay. Moving on. Canada's inflation rate rose to 2.4%, and that's not really a surprise to me, given that that's been headed that way because of the high gas prices.
Yes, that's our inflation was a very positive thing. We were down to 1.8%, down to 1.8% of inflation. And thank you very much for the short-term pain. Mr. Trump and your war has pushed the gas prices up and has pushed our inflation
up. March's 21% increase in the price of gas was the largest on record in Canada.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Donald J. for Jesus Trump. Thanks so much for this short-term pain. It's a short-term pain that doesn't seem to end. However, the government policies kicked in yesterday when the government reduced the amount of take it was getting out of gas and oil. And as you noticed, the gas prices plunged. They were $1.47 last night. I got my gas for $1.47 last night.
Huh. Yeah. I filled up at 160 something.
Well, I was driving down Lundy's Lane and I noticed 147.1 or something at a Gale station there on Thorstone Road, just a little west of Portage. So I pulled in there and wondered why that was the cheapest price I saw for gas. And I wondered why the gas station was empty. So I pulled in there and started getting gas. Before I even got the nozzle into the car to gas up, the gas station filled up with people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not surprised, but yeah, because right at the moment, I think anybody's going in and filling up if the price is right.
Imagine you think 147 is a deal on gas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Okay. And did you say 7 million or 7 billion?
For
Uh,
what?
it's a very good question. For what? Yeah.
Uh, 7
I
million.
don't think I'd said
No,
7
7
million.
million. His personal wealth is
Oh,
$7 million, not billion.
you're talking about
Million.
Carney.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I wouldn't repeat that because I don't know. I've not done any research into it. Um,
I looked into it. I
he
was
did say
surprised it
Carney's
was
worth.
that low. They claim that his own personal fortune, if he was to cash in right now, he would be worth. The estimates was $5 to $7 million. I don't know. That was what AI told me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, and I would tend to believe that. Okay. But I've not done any research on it. Is all I'm pointing out. Right. Okay. All right. Um, so moving on, a Canadian was killed at Mexico's Tetu. I can't pronounce that one.
Yeah,
Tetucan.
yeah. I have to bring it up. Yeah, yeah, I know the pronunciation, but I have to see it. Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah. I
that's that's the huge pyramids that are close to Mexico City that have that predate the Aztecs.
yeah. Okay.
That's amazing. It's really
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. But apparently, a Canadian was killed in a shooting at this complex recently.
Yeah, the details aren't very clear, but somebody went lunatic. Somebody went what they used to call postal, just lost it, got a gun and started shooting in the air and then started shooting people. Unfortunately, a Canadian woman was killed. Others were injured. Another Canadian was shot. A Russian was shot. A Colombian was shot. There was, I think, 11 people, I think, got injured in one way or another. Some shot, some maybe fell or whatever.
Yeah.
There was a couple, yeah. So and people and there was no real organization here. Then this is the troublesome part. They have the compound, and you have to go in. And as you know, nowadays, just about everywhere you go, you have to be frisked if you've got a bag or something, and they check you for metal and they check you for bags, your bags, whatever. None of that was being done here. So the guy got in with a gun, and he should. And if he went through the normal process, he would not have been able to get in. The other
and this
thing
is particularly disturbing. This is particularly disturbing since we're about 7 weeks away from the commencement of the World Cup, which is going to bring a lot of people to Mexico. Can't be having that in the World Cup.
Well, the silver lining is here, as much of a tragedy as it is here, it made it glaringly obvious to everyone that the Mexican security system is not as good as it should be.
And maybe that'll buck there. And maybe
this is a wake-up call, because if this had happened, if something like this had happened during the time of the World Cup, you could imagine.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, because the biggest sporting event in the world, and it would. I'm hoping that what it will cause is everybody to buck up the security and make sure that things like the security is in place in places like this. I know a lot of people complain about low security, but I'm always grateful. I'm always grateful why I happily put my have my stuff inspected, because I know I've got nothing in it.
Yeah, just wondering all that noises out there. Anyway, so here we have it. I say the silver lining is, like, this poor Canadian woman is being killed. Her life is ended because they didn't have proper security here. And of course, even at the compound, the Teotihuacan compound, people were still coming in to the gates while this was going on. In other words, they had no ability to stop people from entering a place of danger, and no ability of marshaling people and getting them out of danger or bringing in security forces. This was a complete disaster security-wise. The silver lining here, I say, this tragedy may have stopped a bigger tragedy happening during the World Cup, because you can imagine the cartel or any kind of terrorist taking advantage of that kind of thing. And they're going to have a big, huge ceremony at this very place during the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, you see, I can still see the cartel taking advantage of the World Cup. But again, the cartel would likely do so in a way that says no shooting.
It depends. The cartel has done a bunch of terrible stuff due to the fact that they got the cartel's leader was captured.
Yeah.
And they've done a bunch of sort of terrorist-like actions to remind everybody that they still are around and their boss. The problem here is they may have to be paid off or whatever when they come in. I'm more worried, of course, about terrorists. Yeah. If the terrorists saw any number of terrorists for any number of reasons, could see what an easy target this would be, then particularly, let's say if the American team came down or something like that to play a game, they could really make a mess. The Islamists could come in and do a terrible thing. You don't know.
I don't believe that the U.S. will play in Mexico at any time. But I do believe that as the later elements of the campaign go on, if either Canada or Mexico proceed to the later stages, then a lot of those games take place in the US. And they have as I understand it, they have reassigned the Iran games to be taking place in Mexico.
Yes. But the main thing here is, security is going to be extremely important. If they cannot demonstrate elemental security at a very popular tourist place where incidences like this could happen easily, then they have a whole lot of work to do. They have a whole lot of work to do to make sure that the games happen safely in Mexico. They already have a bad reputation with the cartels and the violence, the huge amount of violence that happens due to the cartels.
Yeah.
So they got a way to go.
There's a lot on Scheinbaum's shoulder over the next few weeks to actually get this right for the upcoming World Cup. Right? Yeah,
Scheinbaum seems to be there's no confirmation in this because I don't know that much about her, but from what she says and how she conducts herself, she seems to be a pretty good, damn good leader. We'll see how that plays out during her administration.
Yep. Yeah.
Given all the challenges she has down there.
Yeah.
So I think, given what impresses me about her, that she will make sure that the security happens the way it should, and the security will obviously improve around tourist destinations. That's so unfortunate. Now, this guy was just off his rocker. Yeah, that's what I think. Just off his rocker.
Yeah, I hope it's an isolated incident, right? And not the cartels being in play, because it would do bad for the cartels to actually take part in any violence.
Well, this isn't a demonstration by the cartel. They have already demonstrated in different ways. Yeah. This guy was just a nut, but they could have done something in the tourist area and but they're pretty smart too. They know that a large part of the Mexican money comes from tourism, and they would be pretty much the bad guys in the nation if they did anything to reduce tourism, which brings a lot of jobs.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't think they're that idiotic, frankly.
No, they're pretty smart, as a matter of fact. But anyway, we're done for the day.
Rick is projecting that actually the World Cup may be cancelled. Depends what happens next week in Iran.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think anything's going to be concluded.
I suggest it's not going to be cancelled.
It looks as if like every day it looks like the only thing that Trump can do is escalate. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think anybody thinks that's a good idea. But they've got 4 carriers there now, an incredible amount of firepower. They're bringing it all there. They've got 50,000 troops available, specialist outfits, all that kind of thing. You can only think they want to escalate, which is bad. I think they should have dropped their own blockade. I think they should have dropped their own blockade when Iran opened up the straits, but because they continued their blockade, the Iran closed the straits again. So I think they should coordinate and get as many ships out of there as possible for at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Get them out. Yeah. Get the oil back out there. Get something, so that people aren't in so dire a situation in Africa and Asia. Why aren't you thinking of the average person? Why are they not thinking about the poor person? Iran and the United States, start thinking about them. Come to a deal where you open it right up, even if that means letting Iranian oil out, but get everything else out of there. Get Qatar's oil and gas out. Get the fertilizer out. Get UAE's oil out. Get everybody's oil out so everybody can make some money, but more importantly, relieve the suffering of the poor people of the world, who are the ones that pay the consequences for these foolish wars. In any case, we're coming to the end, and I will remind everybody about Gaza again, but this time I'll put the situation into southern Lebanon. In southern Lebanon, they're doing exactly what the Israelis are doing, exactly what they did in Gaza. Crush and mow down everything possible. And they went into southern Lebanon and they blew up a church. They used it for a bathroom. They desecrated it. They took a statue of Jesus and they pulled it down and they start smashing it with a sledgehammer and beating it up with a sledgehammer. They've wiped out villages in the West Bank, Christian villages in the West Bank, and spit on them and desecrate their cemeteries. They are not our friend. They are not our friend. And they are not on our side. They are on their own side. So anytime we have these warm and fuzzy feelings about Israel being our buddy and they got a nice new land for themselves, they're not our friend, and they're not even their own friend, the way they're behaving.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a crucial point to make. All right, Dave.
Yes. Okay. Without further ado, I bid you do not forget Gaza. That's a nightmare, and we have to fix it.